Okay, I think this is on now. Just get it set up. Are we live? I think we're live. Okay, here we go. So hello, welcome to another one of my lockdown videos, another live stream tonight. And what I want to do with this one, having done somewhere focused on the pedal board building that I've been doing, now that I've got my pedal board built up, I got a question from a friend of mine who was watching one of the other videos who was asking about all the guitars that are behind me and the guitar collection that I've built up over the years of playing. So today's video blog is going to be kind of my musical life history through my instruments. So I'm going to talk through a wee bit about the guitars that I've got, where I got them, what I use them for. I'm kind of going. I'll put my teeth in and try to say that again. I'm going to go in chronological order of the guitars that I've picked up. So I've made up a list of all the ones that I've got here. I'm going to start off with a few that I don't have anymore. So I've kind of broken it up into sort of three sections, starting off with the guitars that I had when I was just starting out, but I don't have anymore. So I started learning on a Nylon classical guitar that my gran had got me as a present for getting into university. And Matt, who was asking about all the guitars behind me, you'll remember some of these ones that I don't have anymore from when we first met at university up in Stirling. So that Nylon classical went around with me pretty much everywhere from my first year when I was just starting to learn. Then I went on to Squire Strat and a Westfield Les Paul, both of which unfortunately got stolen from a student flat that I was in. They were replaced with a Westfield Explorer and an Ovation style bowback acoustic. The Explorer, that died after a very early Proverbial Creek gig at Clyde University, where I tripped down the stairs coming out at the end of the night. That got smashed on the stairs there, and that got replaced with the first of the guitars that I still have. So on to guitars I can actually demonstrate. So I'm playing through my the board that I built into a wet dry setup. A Laney amp dry, which is on the right hand channel, Vox wet on the left. So this is the oldest of the guitars that I still have. This was this was still the one that I was using in the Proverbial Creek days, and this was the only electric that I had for the first couple of Marshall chipped albums. And this is what it sounds like. And that's the reason why I keep it, because it's the only one that I've got with humbuckers, so it's this big full-on kind of rock sound. That's played through the clean channels. That is all the effects off. That is no distortion pedals or anything on. And that is with my amp where I usually have it clean, where it's just on the verge of breakup with any of my other guitars. So this is a high output, well, certainly higher than the other guitars that I have. So this is why I've kept this one on. It was a ridiculous shape when I bought it. When I was much younger when I was playing it. It's probably too ridiculous for me to kind of get away with live nowadays. So it doesn't get played much live, but I do still keep it for overdubs and things like that when I'm working in the studio. And this was last used on the Time and Distance album. It was used for a couple of the overdubs on the railway lines. If I can remember how it goes. So that huge distorted humbucker sound, that was the last place I was using this. That was on the Time and Distance Marshall chipped album for the version of the Railway Lines that we recorded there. So I still keep a hold of this for a few sounds like that. I would just mute that, put this back up in the rack. Now the next one that I picked up around about the same time is my Tanglewood acoustic, which is, this is probably the guitar, this is by far the guitar that I have played the most. This has been, this was my main acoustic gigging guitar for years, and this is also the guitar that I still use to busk. So this has been with me the length and breadth of the UK. Probably paid for most of the other guitars. But as you can see, it is a little bit beat up these days. It's been dropped a few times, bits of it are, the wood has just about gone through. So I did replace it eventually for my main gigging guitar, but I still use this one for busking because I don't want to use anything that's too expensive or too nice for busking, because you never know who you're going to wind up running into or what kind of hassle you're going to get on a day playing in Glasgow and Sauchiehall Street. But yeah, this guitar is by far the one that I've played the most out of anything that I own. So this one is still has a place in the collection. So yeah, this is still used for busking, so hopefully it won't be too long until I can use it again. I think we're starting to ease off lockdown now, so hopefully it won't be long before I can get back and busk. So that's the Tanglewood acoustic. Now, one of the reasons I have so many guitars which I've acquired over the years is because of playing in all manner of different bands, and one of the reasons I wanted to do this blog, as well as asking about the guitars, is about how you build up a collection for working in different bands, how different guitars have different sound and different characteristics and different feels that will suit some projects more than others. So of all the things that I've played in over the years, it's been Proverbial Creek, where I played the Explorer. The next thing that I did after that was a solo record, which was largely acoustic with the Tanglewood acoustic. and I bought my first bass around that time as well. So this is the bass that was used on all the solo album and the 2 solo EPs. This Is Not a Drill, Miller's Folly, and All the King's Horses. If I can even remember my own stuff. It was used for all the first Marshall chipped albums, whether it was played by myself or Andrew Tom, who was the first bass player. Ross Gilchrist was the first bass player, then Andrew Tom took over on bass. He was playing using this bass borrowed from me. And I also used this in all the 2 albums that I recorded with the Gatton Squeaks. So it's a very useful thing to have a large collection of different instruments, because you never know kind of what kind of projects can come your way. So I started off as just a guitarist, but wound up playing bass with Roscoe Vacant and the Gatton Squeaks, which also included Ross Gilchrist, Ross Morris, Roscoe Vacant as the front man of the band, Noddy on drums, and it was great fun to play bass as my main instrument for a while. The bass line for Daughter of the Valley, which was one of the songs that we did with Roscoe Vacant and the Gatton Squeaks. Those albums are still around on all the usual kind of streaming places. If you want to check them out, do check them out. I misplayed in that band. That was a good fun time. So that's Yamaha bass. Played with Gatton Squeaks, Marshall chips and solo. The next project that I was working on I was briefly a mandolin player. Dave Hughes and the Renegade folk punk band. I'd always fancied getting a mandolin because I'm a big REM fan, so I wanted to try and learn how to play things like Losing My Religion. It turns out if you're 6'4", a mandolin is not the most convenient of instruments. Because trying to get your hands wrapped around it is a little tricky. Time I even picked this up. It's in a bit of a state now. The strings are almost entirely rust. I haven't played this in years. So I'm very, very out of practice on it. Not that I was ever that great on it in the first place. Today I was a wee bit of mandolin, a couple of REM riffs, Losing My Religion, You Are the Everything. So yeah, and obviously it's kind of handy to have a load of different instruments. Guitars, bass, mandolin. Where does it go next? But as for the differences between guitars themselves, oh, and if the camera can focus again, differences between guitars themselves are not always so immediately obvious. But if you're the obvious one, and let's be honest, this does play a part, is just the look of them. This is my Dan Electro DC59, which was the next guitar that I picked up a few years later. And this, for a while, took over from the Explorer as my main Marshall chip guitar. I've always wanted a Rickenbacker, and at the time could not come even close to thinking about affording one. So this was my poor man's Rickenbacker. Single coil lipstick pickups, so it's got a much sharper sound than the big fat sound of the humbuckers that are in the Explorer. And I had this as a regular 6-string guitar as my main Marshall chip guitar for a long time. What I've done with it nowadays, and this makes it more obvious how it's a more of a unique sound, is that I use this in Nashville tuning, which means that I take the octave strings from a 12-string set and put them on as a 6-string guitar, so it's only got the octave strings on it. So this sounds like this. The E and the B are unison strings with the 6-string set, the others are all an octave higher. So when Marshall chips were recording the Time and Distance album, I used this as a guitar to put on overdubs on a lot of the tracks, because it just brings a little bit more kind of high-end sparkle onto the tracks. Bit aggressive, but if you go into the other pickup, a bit more manageable. And one of the other big advantages that this has over the Explorer is this is considerably lighter. Obviously the weight of the wood in the Explorer is one of the reasons why it's such a resonant, big, massive sound. But this being lighter, it's much of a more of a thinner sound. Particularly once it's in Nashville tuning. But you can see how you can use different guitars in different setups to achieve very, very different sounds, which can complement each other if you record overdubs with them, put them all in a blend in the mix. This isn't a setup that you would use live very often, but it's a nicely interesting thing just to have in the studio as an option. So that's the Dan Electro DC59. And the next addition to the collection is over here. This was picked up again for the Gantz Greeks. We found that we were doing few acoustic gigs. Where's the plug for that? Is it in the end? It's in the end, isn't it? So yeah, we were getting quite a few little acoustic gigs, in-store things, our smaller gigs, and it was quite handy to have an acoustic bass that I could just DI. So when we did the second album, which was a bit less kind of punk influence than the first one, this is a very handy thing to have for some of the live shows that we did around that, and for some of the in-store things we did with the first album, or things like the Moga EP with Roscoe Vacant and the Cat and Squeaks. I'm trying to think if I've used it for anything else, and I'm not sure if I have much. I think when Visceral Noise Department came around to do a live from the living room stream, they borrowed it for that. So yes, it's another one of those things that's just nice to have around, just for different options, just so you're not always sounding exactly the same. That's the main reason that I kind of collect guitars. I've got a couple that I use as my main thing that I use all the time, and then it's just nice to have a couple of different options that you can use on a session. Never going to be good enough for a proper upright double bass, but an acoustic bass like this, that'll do me for that kind of sound. So that's where does this, that goes back up here. And the next thing that I picked up, I finally was in a position to get my absolute dream guitar. So this is onto one of the ones that I use as my main instrument now. This is my Rickenbacker. It's a Jetglow 330. You can get the pin in there. So I was finally able to, in a position where I could get a guitar that I always wanted a Rickenbacker. So I was looking around to try and find one that's similar to the one that my absolute guitar hero Peter Buck plays. He plays a 360 in Jetglow. This is the 330, which is the model one down from that. There's not a huge difference between the 330 and the 360. In practical terms, they both start out with the same body. The 360 gets a bit more contouring around, so it's supposedly a little bit more comfortable to play. It also comes with a stereo output, which I never thought I would actually be able to be using in a practical situation, but I am now set up here with two amplifiers for wet dry, although from a mono output. I'm using the splitter pedal in my pedal board to go to between 1 amp without effects, 1 amp with effects. So this is my Rickenbacker. sound of any instrument that I've ever owned. But, this is the guitar that I use most of the time in Marshall chipped, alongside one other one that's kind of joint with it, which I'll come on to a wee bit later. This is the guitar that was all over the Time and Distance album. So pretty much every song, I think every single song on that was played with the Rickenbacker as the main instrument, with a few others added on for different character. It's known for its kind of clean, chimey sound. So songs like Star, that we did on the New Hellfire Club compilation album. Victories. This always sounds like a very happy guitar to me. Anytime that we're doing anything that could be even vaguely considered pop, this is the guitar that I will go to first of all. Especially clean like that. But you can actually take distortion pedals really well, which a lot of people don't think about for Rickenbackers. They don't think of them as a really heavy sounding guitar, but that's paired up with a Proco Rat, which is a distortion pedal that's still fairly new to me. I'm still kind of getting my head around it. And I realise I'm going to a lot of REM riffs today. I think just because I've not played guitar in a long time, I'm defaulting to where I kind of first started learning. So yeah, this is one of the main guitars that I have always wanted and will be a part of my collection forever, basically. And this is going nowhere. This is one of my favourites to play. But there is one other guitar in the collection which I'll get onto before too long, which I'm also kind of known for playing. The next thing that I picked up after that, as I said earlier, my old Tango acoustic has seen better days for gigging. I also play guitar in a Cayley band, so it was kind of important to have a guitar that looked presentable for wedding gigs and things like that. this is another Epiphone. I'm quite a fan of the Epiphone guitars. This is an acoustic that I got for doing covers gigs, for playing with Furore Ceilidh Band. That's that one. Great acoustic, not a lot to say about that. So we're going to rattle through onto another one that doesn't get an awful lot of play, but is quite handy to have for studio sessions. And my favourite song on the new Marshall chipped album is Sleepwalking Screaming, and this is the guitar that I played the rhythm track for that. Yeah, this guitar is considerably better than it has any business to be. This is one of two Gear for Music 12 strings that I have. I think this was under £100 for a 12 string electric guitar. It is far nicer than the price would have you believe. I did take it in to get it set up so it plays a wee bit better than it came out of the box, but the 12 string sound from Sleepwalking Screaming on the new Marshall chipped album is this Gear for Music 12 string. So this is I use this sometimes in recordings as well as the Nashville tuning. Because this has got the full 12, although that's only got the octave, you get a much more of a thicker sound with the 12 strings. So sometimes if you've already got quite a thick mix with guitars, the Dan Electro, where you're only getting the higher strings, is maybe a little easier to find a place in a mix. But if you're not overloading a track with guitars, that big full spectrum sparkly sound of the 12 string. Now that we've got Mike's van to cart gear around to gigs, this might wind up getting used a lot more for gigs. It's not very handy to take with me just for one or two songs when I've got to carry it all myself, but hopefully in years to come, once we can get back gigging, get Mike's van on the road, this might find itself getting used for more than just studio sessions. Now, as I say, I've got two Gear for Music 12 strings. This is an acoustic one. A friend's dad was selling it, so I thought I'd pick it up as another wee useful thing to have in the studio. I keep it one semitone tuned down, just to make life a little bit easier on the neck when it's not seeing much use. But this is your songs like Tonight on Time and Distance. That was played on this. It is quite an awkward guitar to play. The neck is a little bit thick for me, the action's a bit high, and the intonation's not great outside of the first few frets, but if you're just playing rhythm guitar down low there, it is an absolutely glorious sound. And whenever I'm doing acoustic recording projects, this does quite often find itself getting used as a wee overdub here and there, or sometimes even a main rhythm track. And next to it is a guitar that I picked up intending to use it as a backup for the Rickenbacker. Because at the time I got this was around about start of 2016. I was playing at the time in a covers band, and I wanted something that I could throw into a soft gig bag rather than a carton of heavy case, to go down onto the train to Ayr to where we were practicing. Saw this Harley Benton Telecaster in a cash converters and thought, yeah, that'll do. The covers band didn't really come to much, and this was repurposed as the Paul Part guitar. So myself and Ben Hughes had been playing around for years doing acoustic stuff, but we got the chance to do a wee bit of work with a few friends to make it into a full band. Jimmy, Pete and Jenny have all played their part in Paul Part at one time or another, and this guitar is the electric Paul Part guitar. It's the most obnoxious sounding thing you'll ever come across, which made it absolutely perfect for Paul Part. So yeah, action's way too high for anything but punk, but that's all we ever really played. It's just a disgustingly trebly sound. It's really, really aggressive, but for the kind of stuff that we were doing with that band, it was absolutely perfect. And let me just show you some of the decoration on it. So I'll start off with the Paul Part one. We're always big on our Christmas songs. And of course that was a wee bit of You Look Like Harry Potter that was playing there. Doctor Who, in a Fez, which has got very, very worn away. Some pop art Andy Warhol, if I can even say it, Andy Warhol TARDISes. And yeah, it is played by Dave, who is me. That Dave, who gave me the sticker, was Dave, who's the bassist in the Pixies. Not the Pixies, the Posies. Let me try and say anything right today. So the Posies, Marshall Chip got the chance to support them a few years ago, and they were absolutely lovely guys. Got chatting to Dave, the bassist, in backstage at King Tut's for ages after we'd sound checked. And when he realised I was another Dave as well, he gave me a Dave sticker to put on the guitar. So that is on the pop art guitar. Thank you to Dave from the Posies. Now, what is next on my list after the pop art guitar? Next, it's my latest acquisition, which was another cash converters find. Cash converters and charity shops and the like can be very, very good places to pick up absolute bargains or unusual guitars. Always worth keeping an eye out on what they've got. This is a DeArmond's Starfire, which is actually a fairly rare bass. This is a 90s reissue of the bass guitar that the bassist and the Byrds used. But it was only very briefly in the 90s that I think it was Fender acquired the rights to the Starfire brand and the DeArmond brand and all the different various companies that at one time I had put this guitar together in the 60s. Fender briefly owned the rights to all of them in the 90s, put out this reissue, but it was only available for a couple of years, so these are, even in the reissues, these are quite rare. Needs a bit of a setup. I was going to take it in to get properly seen to before lockdown, but I've not had a chance to do that yet. Alright, let's get this on the go. A little bit rattly, that needs a proper setup, but it's a beautiful bass, and it's a lovely sound, a really resonant bass sound, because it's a hollow bodied bass, which you don't see many of. So we've not done any recording with this yet outside of a couple of demos, but we did use this in the Sleepwalking Screaming video because it's such a pretty thing to look at. So that is pretty much all my guitar collection, apart from the one other guitar, which I need to mute that first. The one other guitar that I found that holds a candle to the Rickenbacker in place of my main guitar affections. Which is the Epiphone Wildcat. This is P90s, so you would expect it to be quite bright, but because I'm comparing it to a Rickenbacker, this is the guitar that I go to when I'm looking for a slightly darker sound than the Rick. Let's actually take it down to drop D, give you a little demo of a new one. So that's a wee bit of a new one that I'm working on. So yeah, the main reason to keep a large guitar collection is because they've got such different characteristics and sound, and you'll find that they kind of draw different things out of you depending on how you set them up, what tones you're getting out of them. So that as soon as you start playing it, kind of different things will come into mind. That's a little bit of the Epiphone Wildcat. So that and the Rickenbacker are the kind of my two main go-to sounds. But all the rest are very, very handy for bringing out kind of different ideas, inspiring different approaches to songs. Different sounds can bring out different parts of your personality and different creative ideas. So there we are, my guitars. And hopefully it's not going to be too much longer until I can get out on the road and using them again. So thank you for watching. Hope you've enjoyed that, found it interesting. If you have, please do subscribe to the channel, like the video, all the usual kind of stuff. And I'll see you again soon. Bye.